Berurah Shir. In today's class, we're picking up with Siman Kuf Yud Gimel, and we will be discussing the laws about bowing at the brachos. Okay, they're called kriyos. Okay, they are times when you bend. And the Hebrew has a few different words that they use. We won't go into that. We'll be kind of general about the names, but just know that there's certain types of times when you bend at the knee, when you fold at the torso. We'll try to be as specific as possible. It's a long section. Let's see how much we can get through in our shiur today. Maybe we'll make it into two different shiurim. We shall see. Okay, so here are the blessings. The first halacha over here, halacha aleph. These are the blessings for which you should bow. Okay, so the first is avos. Okay, the blessings that refer to our fathers. Okay, you bend at the Baruch Atah Hashem at the beginning and the Baruch Atah Hashem at the end. And then in hoda'ah, right, the one that starts with the word modim, you do you bow at the beginning and at the end. Okay. And if it should be that a person was accustomed to bend their body, okay, bend their torso at the end of every blessing, or at the beginning of them, we teach them not to do that. However, in the middle, they are permitted to engage in a bow. Okay, so what does that mean that they may engage in a bow? Okay. So the Shulchan Aruch says, the Mishnah Berurah says that the Shulchan Aruch is saying that when it says that you can bow at the beginning of Modim, and at the end, it says that the word Modim is where you do the first bow, and then at the end, the Baruch Atah Hashem. So the word Modim is the only time that you bow when you don't have the actual name of Hashem mentioned. So the Mishnah Berurah now explains what does it mean not to bow. So because we don't want you to change the original enactment of the rabbis. Okay, because they only said they only said people to do it at certain times, and people will start creating their own stringencies about bowing. And also, there's the concern about what's known as yuhara, that a person will think that they're somehow that much more holy because they are engaged more significantly in the bowing, and so as we talked about this in an earlier shiur quite some time ago when we talked about tzitzis. Yuhara is mentioned there in the Ramah as since women are engaged in not to do the mitzvah of tzitzis, that a woman who did wear tzitzis, it's called yuhara, and there's other examples of it as well. And yuhara mentions that a person will act as if they are somehow more holy than everybody else when there's no custom to engage in something that is being done. And this shiur also says over here, in the middle you're allowed to. Okay, and so there's only one person who didn't like it, but everyone was okay with it. So if you bow in the middle, it's okay, because that is not changing what the rabbis enacted. Historically, in a temple, did the Jews ever fully prostrate during Shachrit daily, or only in the Musaf on Yom Kippur? Good question. They did prostrate themselves regularly. I actually haven't had a chance to look into this, but my understanding was that they were so pronounced. The bowings are so pronounced that sometimes people would start in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei. They'd start in one side of the room and end up in the other side of the room. And we talked about that in terms of moving while engaging in the bowing. We talked about if you had to move. We're going to get into some of that now. So we talked about how Rabbi Akiva would daven, and he would be all over the room with all the bowing and getting up. So they definitely did that, and for sure you did it in the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, and he would mention God's name on several occasions. Okay, now let's do halacha 2 over here. Those who have the custom to bow during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, when you say Zachrenu and Richamocha, those additional lines you say in the middle there, those people must stand up at the end of those sentences that they're standing upright for the end of the blessing. Okay, and the Ramah adds that even though those lines are in the first couple blessings, the Avos ones, okay, and you're going to bow again anyway, nonetheless, we should make sure that they stand up a little bit in order that they should look like they're actually bowing at the end themselves. Okay, and they're bowing because there's an actual obligation. Mishnah Berurah explains that that when they say that they were bowing, it means the whole prayer was done bowing. Okay, and they literally bent over like 90 degrees. And that's what they're talking about. However, what they need to do is stand up at the end in order to make noticeable prostrations in the middle of davening. Okay, and the blessings the parts of the blessings that we're referring to are Zachrenu and Mi Kamocha. Okay, and so those are only at the beginning. And the Mishnah Berurah explains that the reasoning for this is not the same as in other places to stand up. Okay. So the reason why this is a little bit different is because this is the second blessing of Mechaye Mesim, right? The one where you're talking about raising up the dead, and so there's no bowing in that blessing at all as it is. Okay, so but people were folding for this part of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, so therefore bowing would be a problem. So it's only for that one line. Now with Zachrenu, it's different because that is part of the bowing that was instituted by the rabbis themselves, because you're going to say Magen Avraham at the end, and there's a bow right before that. And since you're already folded over at that time, it's not so obvious that you're trying to add on to what the rabbis enacted. So there's a little bit of difference between the two, meaning between when you need to stand up by Zachrenu and when you need to stand up by Michamocha. By Zachrenu, you have to stand up in order to fully bow and make sure that's noticeable. Okay, because you have to bow with the Baruch Atah at the end of the blessing. But when you stand up at Michamocha, you then have to stand up and stay up there. Okay, and so even though they're equitable in terms of you're only bowing for that term, the reasons are different, as he explained. Okay, and the Ramah adds that you have to stand up because of the obligation to bow. And the Mishnah Berurah explains because the bowing over here was not, the bowing here at this line was not required. And you have to be able to bow in order to make it recognizable. Okay, we're going to come back to that in the next halach over here. Okay, and so here's other weird places where people bow. Okay, during the Shabbat morning service, it's a little introduction to this. There's a prayer called Nishmas Kol Chai, which is right at the very end of Shacharis, at the end of Pesukei Zimra. So some people used to bow at some words over there, and so the Shulchan Aruch says if you bow at the line that every single tall person should be bowed before you, or at the line right, or it says before you we shall be thankful. Okay, that's in one prayer. Now, or you're in the part of Hallel known as the Hoda'ah, right? Okay, so that's the Hodu Hashem Ki Tov, that part of it. Okay, or you try to bow during Birkas Hamazon. Okay, the entire benching. So we say this is inappropriate. Okay, and why the Ramah adds because you should only do a bowing when the rabbi said you should bow. Okay, and Mishnah Berurah brings both of those things. So the Hoda of Hallel is Hodu Hashem, like I just mentioned, and the Birkas Hamazon is in No D'Lecha Hashem Elokeinu. Okay, or in the second half of that, Ala Kol Anach Modim Lach. Okay, those are improper because the Mishnah Berurah explains. We just said that you should only bow where the rabbi said to bow. Okay, and so therefore you should do any bowing in the blessing about Yerushalayim and in Bonei Yerushalayim. Okay, and there was one opinion of the Maharil who said that you should bow there, but we disagree with him. The Darchei Moshe, the Mishnah, the long version of the Ramah, his commentary on the Torah says not to bow there either. Okay, so the Magen Avraham says it might be okay to do a little bit. Our custom is not to do anything. Okay, and this is during Shmoneh Esrei. Okay. But not in Shmoneh Esrei. So the thing is, we're talking about Rabbi Akiva over here. So Rabbi Akiva says they would find him in one corner, and they'd find him in a different corner because he did so much bowing. Okay, and the reason why this is, the poskim explain that it was that when he was after finishing the Shmoneh Esrei, the blessings of Shmoneh Esrei, okay, and when that you therefore can do bowing in all the other places. So when the Shulchan Aruch says that you shouldn't do bowing at every time you mention praise and thanks, that's because you're doing it at a bowing for praising and for thanking, and there's no reason to do bowing and prostrating in those situations. And so too, when you're talking about the verse I mentioned in Nishmas Kol Chai, that you should bend over everything to bow to you, every tall thing should bend down to you. You're not referring to yourself, but you're referring to other things. That's also not appropriate to bow for that either. Okay? And for Hallel, you also shouldn't be bowing. So that's why all these things are inappropriate, even though they're not in Shmoneh Esrei. Okay. But otherwise, you can bow all you want to, just like we see about Rabbi Akiva. Okay, we're now talking about how you bow. So this is halacha 3 over here, halacha 4 over here. It says the person who is praying needs to bend. They need to begin their bow until all of the vertebrae in the spine begin to poke out. If you've ever done certain types of yoga, they talk about feeling every single vertebrae. This is what this is. This is a very ancient tradition that they still keep alive in Western societies, of the idea of bowing so every single. So if you look at a finger like this, you go do 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 do. It kind of goes like that. Okay, you kind of like hit every little thing. Now you can't actually bend the entire spine. The idea is that when you tilt your head forward, you should feel. So there's only a few places where the body actually bends, which is the cervical spine, where the cervical spine meets the thorax, and where the thorax meets the lumbar, and where the lumbar attaches to the hip. And you get some give there, but you can't actually control all of that. The folding is as a result. So you can't just like fold your spine. You have to tilt your head. So the idea is that you would lead with your head. So that's what he's going to say over here. So what you shouldn't do is you shouldn't bend. The Shulchan Aruch continues that you should not fold over where you're in the middle of your thighs, okay, and your head is still out straight, right? You shouldn't go like that. You should go, okay. So you should lean over like a reed, okay. So the word is an yichof ka'agamon, okay, and Berurah explains that the word yispakaku means that it should poke out like a knot. Okay, so therefore you kind of roll forward. Okay, number 5. One should not lean so far forward that your mouth would be opposite your belt on your pants. Okay. Now, if you are old or infirm, and you can't bow in such a way where you can actually fold your spine like that, since you have tilted down or dropped your head, that suffices. You kind of go, okay? Because the idea is you want to. It's just that it's hard to bend. So if you have back pain or whatever, so instead of just doing that, you kind of go, that would suffice. Okay, next halacha over here, 6. When you are bowing, you should go quickly in one shot. Okay, when you stand, you should stand slowly, lifting the head first, and then afterwards the rest of the body. So that doesn't look like you're trying to toss off a load. Halacha 7. Now, so that's how you bow. Now, when you bow. When you bow at the word Baruch, and when you stand right before the name of Hashem. What does that mean? So, when you say the word Baruch, that's where you bend. And the bending starts at the knees, okay? So it sounds like at first that you start at the head. The Mishnah is explaining you don't start at the head, you start at the knees, okay? So you bend at the knees first, and then when you say Atah, okay, that is where the whole head poking out spinal column thing is what we're talking about, okay? And also when you say Modim, too, when you bow your head, that's when you kind of bend like the reed, okay? And then you stay down until you say the name Hashem, and then stand back up. Okay, and why is that? Because we say the verse Hashem zokef kufufim. We also, that's one of the morning blessings. Hashem causes the bent to stand up straight. Now, if you're davening and a non-Jew walks by, okay, and he has a cross on his body, okay, or on his hand, and you're at the point where you need to bow, it's better that you not bow, even though you're intending to heaven. You shouldn't show yourself as if you're bowing to somebody wearing a cross. The Magen Avraham also adds, the Mishnah explains that if it's only an if statement, okay. However, some people say that you should not be lenient. So I don't have the Magen Avraham in front of me, and you shouldn't bow because it looks like you're bowing to an idol. Okay, so very simple halacha: don't bow to something that looks like you're bowing to an idol. And we will wrap up here in just a second. It says that this is a little added halacha over here, which is part of the bowing, but also the general enactment about prayer. A person should not add to the way in which Hashem is fashioned in prayer more than what it says. So the prayer says Hakel, Hagadol, Hagibor, V'Hanora. Okay, so the description that's there is saying that he is great, mighty, and awesome, and these are chosen specifically. Okay, and you shouldn't change the format that was formatted by the rabbis of the Talmud. Those stay the same. However, in sections that are supplications, or they are requests, or they are praises that a person takes upon themselves to create on their own, it doesn't matter what you say there. Nonetheless, it is important that if a person wants to add on to the praises that were given to Hashem, that they should only come from verses themselves. This is a very interesting halakha. The Mishnah has absolutely nothing to say on this. Okay, he is silent on this statement. Okay, so it's really quite fascinating. Okay, so there's the Magen Avraham explains what this is talking about. So in some places we say, for example, we put the words in the Shema prayers, we put the words emes v'yatziv next to each other at the end of the Shema. It's not just on the fact that it's Shalokechem, right? It's really based on the fact that we don't want people to say, for example, the statement of your kindness reaches even unto the bird's nest. Okay. So we don't want people to draw the wrong conclusions to say that God's kindness is not actual kindness. They're just laws, and the Rambam brings this down in the laws of Tefillah in chapter 9. Okay, and this statement comes from the Mishnah itself in the 5th chapter of Brachos. Okay, because you also don't want to list it. You don't want to make it sound like Hashem is only kind in these few places. You actually stop the person who says such a thing publicly. Okay, so those things are not appropriate to say. The Kaf HaChaim adds an interesting statement over here as well. Okay, he says that it's impossible to list all of the praises of Hashem. Okay, and so therefore we picked these three because Moshe Rabbeinu says them, and the Gemara brings it down as the most important thing to say, and that's why they were put there. And this is brought down by everybody as the proper thing to say. Okay, and so in other situations as well, again, it's only because of the tefillah that we are limited to these things. However, the Rambam is more expressive in that same chapter, in chapter 9 of Hilchos Tefillah. It says that one shouldn't ever say these types of praises, limiting God's expression of kindness. And even though the Rambam is very specific about it, the Torah brings it. The Beis Yosef himself, here he doesn't bring it. And he says you have more freedom with it. Okay, and on the statement of that you should only recite the psukim that mention these things, because since you're reciting actual verses from Tanakh, you are engaged in not only proper praise, but you're also learning Torah as well. Okay, and so those are things that are really important. Okay, let's see. Let's do one more thing in here. Okay. Let's see. No, that'll take us too much off of. That's all I had prepared for today. So maybe we'll just hold it here, and we'll just go from there. I think we'll just hold it here. Yeah, I think we'll just hold it here. Okay. Thank you very much for joining today in this wonderful laws of prayer, and we will pick up next time. With the different blessings. So we basically covered Avos, and then we're going to talk about Mashiva Ruach, Marid HaGeshem. All those things will be in the next Siman. As we're basically everything you've been waiting for. You're culminating, and now we talked about prayer for all these weeks. Now we're going to actually learn the prayers themselves. So thank you for coming out, and thank you for watching, and everyone have a wonderful day.